This is Make It Mentionable. I'm Alyssa Patmos, and this is the show about being human in a world that encourages us to be robots. I invite you to join me as we journey through the mess, the magic, and the mania in between, because what we can talk about, we can manage. This honest conversation extravaganza includes free-flowing conversations and high doses of vulnerability to remind you that you aren't alone. No topic is off limits, and episodes are designed to leave you smarter, aka more self-aware than when you came. I am so glad you're here. Welcome back to another episode of Make It Mentionable. I'm your host, Alyssa Patmos, and Geoff is here with me on the couch. And this is part 2. This is a continuation of last week's episode where Geoff and I were breaking down and reading through a list of 45 life lessons or lessons that life taught 90-year-old Regina Brett. So she wrote this list when she turned 90 years old, and Geoff found it a few weeks ago, and we were at a bar and we started talking through it, and then we were like, this would be a great episode. And so we started last week, and although we had the intention of getting through all of them, we didn't. So I think today we are on number 29 is where we're kicking it off. Last week, some of the things that were covered, your favorite, forgive everyone everything. Let's see. When it comes to chocolate, resistance is futile. I mean, that's just common sense. Don't compare your life to others. You have no idea what their journey is all about. So if you want to hear the first 28, catch last week's episode and you can jump in with us. Right now, we're at 29. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I love this one. I don't think we did. Oh, did we get through this one? No, I don't think we did, but this is actually my favorite one on the list. This is like the last one that we've seen. So after this, I have no idea what's coming. This one though is what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yes. And the way that's written is so great.
Why do you think?
Because it's kind of shot. Like I almost have to reread it for me. Like I'm expecting something else. It's not what I'm expecting. And it makes me really think. And it takes you further than don't worry about what other people think of you. Mm-hmm. It goes to an extreme of it's none of your business, as in like, do not only, hear it and don't care. It's like, it's none of your business. Don't even go there from the start. Like live your life. Don't worry about what other people think, but taking it even that extra step.
The thing that I like about it is when people say, like, don't worry about what other people think. It's very much like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do instead? Or how do you not do that? It can be a very ambiguous thing to say, because then you're left figuring out like, okay, great, but like how? And so I love this one because it's more instructive. Like it sort of gives the answer how, because it's very definitive in, what other people think is none of your business. So you don't even think about it in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I love.
Like train yourself to not even think about it in the first place. Like, hey, that's none of my business. I'm over here. I'm living my life. I judge what I do, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The next one, 30. Time heals almost everything. Give time. I understand what this one is trying to say. We talk about, a lot of people say time heals all wounds, and I just don't agree. Time is beneficial. Things need space at times, but time alone for me doesn't heal things. Awareness, like holding the space for something across a period of time can help heal wounds. It doesn't need to be this like willpowered effort of intention all the time, but I'm not sure that time itself or time alone heals everything. In fact, I don't think it does.
Right. I'm glad she wrote this the way she did. And we've talked about this. Like we didn't read this, but we talked about that other saying, time heals all wounds. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I used to think it did. This is another one of my growth areas of like, give things time. Times heals all wounds. And it does heal many wounds, and a lot of wounds we need to just give time to. And a lot of physical wounds you can apply that to, and some emotional wounds. But I've definitely evolved to a point of knowing that the wounds that we repress don't heal without attention. And so it isn't a matter of just give it time. If we never do the healing, if we never shine a light on them and apply something to heal, wounds can stick with us forever.
Yes, I agree. And it's like airing out a cut that you get is not just giving that time even either. You know, your body is going through a bunch of active process that we're not consciously aware of or know exactly the fine tunings of it. Unless you're a doctor, then you might. But even that isn't just, oh yeah, give it time and it will heal. No, like your body is going through something active. Inflammation is a sign that your body knows something is there and it's sending resources there.
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about physical ailments, but I've had knee surgery on both knees. And the first one, I did what I thought was right. And it took longer to heal and it atrophied more. Like I didn't use it. I didn't apply as much healing activity as I did the second one, which healed more quickly. So I think that applies. And you know, if we repress something or we try to ignore it, we don't do what needs to be done to actively heal it, it can last a lot longer.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So 31, however good or bad a situation is, it will change. I agree with this. Someone recently, this has been said in many different ways, but I think, I don't remember who I saw this from in a conversation recently, but they were talking about how change is inevitable, which yes, I agree with across the board. Transformation though is a choice. And I always like that because change is happening moment by moment. We can't control it. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. What we choose to do about that is a very different thing and opens up a lot of potential for liberation and freedom. But in general, yeah, like it's something is always going to change.
Yeah. And this ties in the one above, I think, in some sense, like, especially if we're in a bad situation or something seems so negative, we can lose perspective and lose knowledge of the fact that, hey, it's not always going to be this way. It's not always going to be that bad. And likewise, it's not always going to be that good. In what I do for a living, I can have pretty extremes. I can have runs of doing really, really well with my predictions and really, really poor. And what I've had to learn over time is just like, hey, neither of those is going to stick around forever. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Things will change.
Yes. Okay. 32. Don't take yourself so seriously. No one else does. Love it. For those of you tuning in, Geoff just turned himself into a moose and stuck out his tongue.
It's cute.
Incentives of watching it on YouTube as well.
Come see us on YouTube.
Don't take yourself so seriously. No one else does. This one is hard for me, has been harder for me to learn throughout the course of my life. I used to get so embarrassed. Like I would turn into a stage 5 bitch if I got embarrassed, which is not great, but you know, I had to learn through it. And part of it was because like I took myself seriously, not in the way of like thinking I'm the shit, but more so like trying to maintain appearances or keep things perfect, not wanting to disappoint people. Like I don't want to feel embarrassed because that means I'm probably being rejected in some sort. And so all of that like led to this seriousness, which then if it gets triggered is like a freaking cannon exploding instead of like, you know, just something smaller. So I eventually got over that by forcing myself to do karaoke in a very well-known karaoke bar in Austin, which was very fun. And that was a true moment of not taking myself so seriously. And it was very liberating.
It is liberating. And we lose touch, and society tells us, and our parents tell us, like, be more serious, grow up, act like an adult. And to the extent we don't feel like we're being taken seriously as a child or even as an adult, we're going to do this more. We're going to seek to find ways to be taken more seriously. But is that like to what end?
Right.
That's why I love comedians. Like I'm jealous of their jobs. They get to like tell jokes for a living and just laugh and make fun of themselves and others. And what a great place to be. And there's times that we do that, or I'm in that space, and I love myself more when I'm not taking myself so seriously.
Yeah. And we talk about this, like whenever you're uncovering stuff or, just working with human awareness and human behavior, like we're funny creatures. Like we just do weird shit. And we're not always sure why. Like no one knows. There's no answer to why everything is the way it is, at least that we know of right now. So in that sense, there's like this surface level humor of poking fun with someone or, laughing at an experience. But then there's this deeper level of humor that I think carries a lot of lightness and can be the antidote to taking yourself too seriously, which is to accept your humanity and all that comes with it. And to know, like, shame is part of the human experience. Guilt is part of the human experience. Sadness, joy, the whole spectrum. And when we can embrace and allow ourselves to actually be more human, I think we can laugh at ourselves more and not take ourselves so damn seriously.
Yeah. And perfectionism is the enemy of this. If we have that playing, if we're listening to that part of ourselves, we stumble and fall. We say something stupid. And we feel like we have to defend it, and we feel like we have to avoid looking that way. And when we're in our healthier place, I think we kind of laugh and go, oh, wow, that was stupid.
Yeah. And I like the point you made about kids as well, because so many times adults like get in their stuff and they're busy and they have a responsibility and the demand of the world, like all these things that appear to be this pressure because they're taking themselves too seriously. And then a kid comes around in their lighthearted way. And, so many times unintentionally, we can shut that down. And it's not to say that one moment changes everything for a kid. It's a sequence, but those moments become evidence of, oh, like I better not do that. Like I talked about trapped joy, like in a lot of ways, joy has been a harder emotion for me to express, and you've experienced this with me. Joy has been a harder emotion for me to express than sadness at times or than frustration. And I don't know exactly where that comes from. I have guesses. I don't need to know particularly. But in that, I think it's these moments where we're taught to value, the seriousness and the practicality, and not always to like pause and just be able to be in the moment with our joy.
Yes. And child rearing, like a lifetime of hearing like, hey, stop screwing around, grow up, act like an adult. These are literally words that come out of all parents' mouths. And it's like, we don't allow them to be children long enough. And there's this fear of like, oh, they're not going to grow up. They're not going to be proper. They're going to be a screw up. But as kids, they're supposed to be. And even to some extent later in life, like we've got to have that play inside of us. So we need to be careful about what message we're sending to our kids and how much of that is for us and our own comfort and anxiety and what it's doing to them. And in general, I think we tell kids too much to stop being a kid.
I would agree, but I also think it's because we don't let ourselves be kids, which it comes back to this around don't take yourself so seriously. It's such a gift to kids when we're not operating out of our fear all the time.
Yes.
All right. So 33, I think this is something that kids are great at. This has numerous connotations, so I'm curious what you're going to think of it. 33 is believe in miracles.
Makes me think of the 1980 Olympic hockey team, which may mean nothing to you, but that's what comes to mind for me. But believe in miracles. Ooh, there's a lot wrapped up in that. For me, there's a religious undertone, which of course I have some aversion to. But the idea of amazing things happening, things we couldn't believe would be possible, Of course, absolutely, that happens. And there's some balance here to me. There's a belief or a need for miracles that some people can hang on to, and take anything to either extreme, and it can be damaging. And if we're living our life waiting for a miracle, and needing that to
using
be
it
happy
as
or
an
successful,
excuse
yes,
not to take
that's probably not super healthy. But having a healthy belief in great things happening, and maybe something amazing that I can't even imagine is going to happen, or the best thing in the world, that this is all going to come together. Believing in that in some way can help those create room for those things to happen.
Yeah, I think to what you were saying, if we're using as believing in miracles as an excuse not to take responsibility for something, or like to move forward and just waiting for everything to happen, I don't love it at that extreme. I don't have as much of a problem with the word miracles, but I think for me, I would change this to believe in magic. Like magic is just a word that resonates with me more. And the sparkle emoji, you know, like the 3 little sparkles, that is my favorite emoji. I use it all the time. And so for me, that resonates a little bit more. And to me, that just means, you know, being able to be open to the unseen. And I'm a huge believer in that, because if you've even looked at, you know, how much technology has evolved over the past 100 years, the things that we have now would look like magic to people from 100 years ago. And we just don't know. We don't know the capacity of what is possible, or what new discovery we're going to have that totally changes the way we think about things. And so for me, being open to possibility in any form, and being able to embrace things that we can't see and trust in that, is really powerful. And it's like, so a week and a half ago, we were on a plane back from Vegas from the Super Bowl. And well, no, actually, yeah, we were in Vegas, and we rarely fly where there's a stop in between. But for some reason, we ended up having a layover in LA. And as we were landing there, I had this random thought. I was like, I didn't know we were going to be in LA. It kind of would have been fun to be able to stay here for a night. I haven't spent a bunch of time there. And turns out he had the same thought, which I had no idea. Neither of us expressed it. So we get off the plane, even though we're supposed to turn right back around and get on that exact same plane at that same gate 20 minutes from then. And so we get off the plane, and the terminal is insanely busy, because that's where the Super Bowl was. And they overbooked the flight. And all of a sudden they're asking for volunteers if you want to fly out later that day or the next day. And we both kind of looked at each other, and we were like, sure. And then it comes out that like both of us had this thought about staying in LA, and they're offering not just like $300 vouchers, they were offering $1,200 vouchers to give up our seat and to fly back. So we made off without having to gamble at all in Vegas with $2,400 for a trip. And it's those sorts of things, like where it's just like, believe in the magic. Like I wasn't expecting that to happen. I didn't need it to happen, but it's great.
Yes. Yes. I'm not sure that's a miracle, but your reframe of magic. Yes. And being open to like good things happening and unexpected positive things. And I totally agree with that. And somehow I feel like we manifested that in some way, shape, or form.
And miracles can be more extreme. Like miracles can be, you know, like believe in, I think a lot of people use the term miracle in terms of like spontaneous healing. And I think there's a lot of nuance to that. But I'm a fan of believing in magic and miracles, because why the hell not?
Agreed.
If we can get help, why not? Okay. All right. I think Regina was religious. 34. God loves you because of who God is, not because of anything you did or didn't do. So for me, I'm going to read this like in terms of the universe, or like universal energy, like nature. I can also view this sort of as like God is nature to me, not in the traditional sense. So however you want to think of God, Regina is talking about God loves you because of who God is, not because of anything you did or didn't do. So for you?
Well, I would read that as like, I love myself because of who I am, or the universe, like you're saying, like, I am worthy of love because of who I am as a human, not because of what I do. And so again, yes, we can reframe this for those that believe in religion and God. Great, keep it as is. But however you want to word this, there's a lot of wisdom in this.
Yeah.
And this is something you've personally struggled with quite a bit, of this distinction of like, where does my worth lie?
Yeah, it is. For me, it does come down to a question of where our worth is. And the world that we live in, especially in Western society, places so much of our worth on what we do instead of who we are. If you think about going to a gathering, one of the first questions out of people's mouths usually is like, oh, hi, what do you do? And it's like, okay, I can tell you what I do, which is interesting, but that's not like the core of my being. That's not who I am. And that's one of the reasons why on this show, I don't read official bios and I have people introduce themselves. And it's not always about their work. It's about their experience and things that they've learned and making things mentionable. It's more about who we are as people.
Mm-hmm. So, I think our upbringing and back to our parents, like that plays a huge role in this.
For
like,
sure.
How we rear our kids and what messages we send and what do we reward them for?
Right. I got rewarded for straight A's. I got dinner out with my grandparents. And have you ever been to a Sweet Tomatoes?
Yes.
Okay. So my grandparents, every time I got an A, I love my grandparents. They're great people. And every time I got an A, or a report card of all A's, they would take my brother and I to Sweet Tomatoes. But the best part about Sweet Tomatoes, and this is terrible, was they had a soft serve ice cream machine. So after you eat the delicious bread at the buffet, which I can no longer and would no longer eat, and go around and get all the other things, the soft serve ice cream machine was there, and they would have these mini cones, and my brother and I would compete to who could eat the most ice cream. So back to the point of our parents or grandparents, people we who are around us, raising us, foster what we value in a lot of ways. And if they value us for our accomplishments over our imagination or like just who we are in the world and how we show up, it shapes us.
And it's not that they do. Like, honestly, like I think back to my parenting and I've warded money for A's and this and that. And some of that is probably not healthy in that, like, my anxiety is reduced or my pride is boosted if my kids are getting great grades, right? Or accomplishing something on the sports field. And there's some real unhealthiness potentially in that in terms of how it makes me feel. And I'm using them for that purpose. And I'm manipulating them in terms of incentivizing them for that purpose. There's something unhealthy. But I also know, like, I did and do love my kids for who they are. And I communicated that as well. I think we just need to be careful. We need to think about the impact. And even if we truly love them for who they are they picking up on that because of how we communicate with them and how often we talk about how great it is that they accomplished something?
Well, I've worked with one of your sons and I've had to have this conversation with him. Oh. So even though, you might have the best intention and our parents have the best intention as parents, it doesn't mean that that's what this young little thing in front of you is perceiving. Yeah. And so it takes conscious effort on both parts. So I love how you reframed this to being something about you, because we can make a choice to value ourselves for who we are too. And that changes how we communicate in the world. I think anytime we give our power to some other authority outside of ourselves, we risk losing a connection to ourselves.
I think we risk everything. Like, like in terms of, we talk a lot about healing and dealing with past things. Like, mostly, at least for me in my experience, it comes down to one core thing. Like, do you love yourself? Do you unconditionally love yourself? And if you do, it kind of almost everything else takes care of itself, because you aren't needing something from someone else to feel good or feel positive or feel loved or lovable. So we
have to add nuance here, because you still need love. You still need connection with other people. That is a very human thing.
Yes. I'm not, good point. And I will clarify. I'm not saying we're just solo beings and we can give everything we need to ourselves.
That's not true.
Without others. Like I fully believe we need other humans. But when things go wrong, when things go south, when our partner breaks up with us, when someone's mad at us, how do we react to that? And if we're coming at it from a place of self-love and self-acceptance, that's much easier to take and get through that difficult period than it is if we question how much we love ourselves, or how lovable we are internally. The way there's difficult times that happen and things we have to get through, and how difficult that is, I think, is largely driven by that piece.
I agree. Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that. 35. Okay. Don't audit life. Show up and make the most of it now. Don't audit life.
What do you think that means?
I'm not sure.
I'm not 100% clear either.
I don't know. Like I used to do brand audits. So I'm trying to think of like, you go through and you like take an audit of it, like you take an inventory, like where is it?
Like where am I relative to where I should be at this age, relative to my peers? Am I as pretty as that person? Am I more successful than these people? Is that what they're getting at?
I have no idea. I'm going to interpret it as, I'm not sure what this one is, but I like the message of presence.
Yes. Well, and if it is what we're talking about here, comparing yourself to others, wishing you were at some other point that you're not, that is taking you out of presence. It's either ruminating about the past, like I haven't done enough, or it's worrying about the future, like I need to catch up or whatever, or my life isn't where it should be, versus like being present, showing up, being happy in the moment you're in.
Yeah. I'm not sure I would keep that one in my list. I think I would change it some, because that one doesn't inherently make sense to me. If this one inherently makes sense to you, please comment, because I want to know. I want to know what it means to you. If this one like is like, oh, I know exactly what that is, or you have a strong opinion about what it is, I would love to know, because I don't get this one entirely. Okay, 36. Growing old beats the alternative, dying young.
That's like the chocolate one. Like, hell yes.
Yeah. I think there's something really beautiful about getting older. And I don't think getting older always has to mean getting weaker, which is what I think a lot of people interpret it as. Think again, back to the one with change, like all things are going to change. And the more we can be present and allow that to happen, like it doesn't have to take anything away. There are some. Well,
we have a culture that values youth, and undervalues old age, and a lot of people understand that that's misplaced, and certainly there are some nice things about our younger years, primarily physically. But in terms of the things that really matter, emotional stability and intelligence and knowledge and wisdom, and honestly, even happiness, like studies show, people in their 60s are the happiest. They're happier than they were in their 50s and 40s and 30s and so forth. So there's things to gain as we get older, and there's things that get better. And so the concept of like getting old is bad is something that I wish we could reframe. And
I think a lot of times we have we don't value older people as much because the pace is different. And we live in a very fast-paced world that prioritizes how productive you can be and how quickly you can move. And one of the realities of getting older is like some things do slow down. It doesn't mean everything has to get slow. I don't believe it means that like you're gonna lose your memory when you get older, anything like that. But in general, the pace of life becomes different in many ways. And I don't think that we always teach younger people how to be present with older people and value their pace.
Yes, because there's sometimes you can reframe the faster pace is frantic, and there's something calming as we get older, and something where we can take a deep breath more and be more at comfort with life's ups and downs. And also, I think you know that I think this way, but like a lot of people take for granted what I believe to be myths about getting older. Like, oh, I'm going to feel worse. I'm going to be fat. I'm going to not want to move.
Right.
I'm going to be tired all the time. I'm going to lose my mental acuity.
Right.
These are myths that are perpetuated so much that people tend to believe them. But like, what if you could get older and still feel vibrant and have lots of energy and have sharp wit? What if? And those things are possible if we're willing to understand what needs to be done to have those things. So in some ways, like my view of it as being older than most of my friends, being older than you, but having been through the decades of obviously young 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or starting my 50s, it does get better. It does get better with age. And even along some of the lines that people just assume it can't be as good, like physically, I'm in physically better shape than I've ever been in my life. So it doesn't, now that's not going to hold forever. And as I move into 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s.
60s, you can look awesome. Do you know, how old is George Clooney? George Clooney is way older than you. I'm pretty sure he's in his 60s.
Yes.
60 is young.
I'm saying
70 is still young.
But what I'm saying is I'm not going to always be able to claim that I'm in the best shape of my life, right?
Yeah.
Even though I can claim that now and I'm in way better shape than I was in my 30s. So that's not going to hold forever, but it doesn't have to be this drastic decline. It doesn't even have to be a decline as early as people think it does.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you know, my grandpa is in his mid 80s and he is so sharp. And so for him, you know, certain things with getting around might be slower, but his mind is incredibly sharp because he puts his attention there. And I think it's so cute. Like my 80-something-year-old grandpa goes to the gym and I think it's great. And he has like a very strong shoe game that I think Kyle would be proud of.
Sure.
So there, it still depends on where your attention goes. And there's a huge difference between that grandpa and my other grandpa, you know, who lived a more sedentary lifestyle. And my mom and I talk about this a lot. Like she saw, you know, two lazy boys in the living room for a large portion of her adult life. And so she, you know, my mom has more of a social life than, you know, I think I ever have. And she loves to dance. And so she's out dancing all the time. And then when I was a competitive ballroom dancer in high school, I remember at one competition, there was a 90-year-old woman in this sexy Latin dress, all in her Swarovski crystals, her high-heeled dance shoes, competing. And like for my mom and I, that is just like movement. There's so much power in movement and keeping energy moving through you. So I like that. I like 36, like growing old beats the alternative, dying young. But for me, I would shift it around something with movement. I would make it more, I don't know.
What's crystallized for me as we're having this discussion about this, my initial reaction to this was like, duh, like, resistance to chocolate is futile. Duh, move on.
Yeah.
But the reason, like, we don't agree with the premise that's implied here. The premise that's implied here is that growing old is bad. And so when someone says this, like it's when someone's complaining about, oh God, I'm getting so old and I can't move like I used to. And then someone replies, well, hey, it's better than the alternative, right? Ha ha. That's the implication here, is that growing old is bad.
Right.
And if we don't believe in that, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Right. I am with you.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I was looking at the next one, which was not very present of me, but I was looking.
You are navigating us here, and you are leading this discussion.
So I don't normally do that, but this can't be a 3-part episode. It's got to be a 2-part episode. So I was looking at the next one, and 37 is your children get only one childhood. And we read a previous one last week, which was, and this is what I was looking at, 19, it's never too late to have a happy childhood, but the second one is up to you and no one else. And so 19 to me is much more about like our self-agency and our choice, regardless of what happens to us as kids. And I think this one is more of a message to parents around like, where are you spending your time?
This is what we've been talking about half this podcast. Like, asking them to grow up too quick, or putting our anxiety on them, asking them to control our fears and deal with our issues and our triggers and things we need healing with. We put so much on our kids, and in some ways we rob them of their
and needing them to be more than where they are in the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead of meeting them where they are, fully accepting where they are and letting them be kids and letting them have a childhood.
Yes.
Because they have so many years to be an adult, but we force them along.
Yeah.
For our benefit in a lot of cases. Or we think it's in their best interest, but that's part of like what we can open minds to. Like, why is it better to have your kid grow up so quick? They're gonna be an adult.
Well, and the power of a kid's imagination is one of the most magical forces on the planet. Like creativity is such a connection to our life force. And a kid, because they are not worried about all these other things yet, is so connected to their creativity. And so their essence, I would love if more parents wrote down some of the creative things or creative things their kids said or creative things that they did, so that as adults, they could look back at it later, because there's such a purity there. And the power of imagination, like a kid will come in and just start telling you a story about a purple dragon and how it's flying over, and who knows where that story is going to go, but it's just like, they have this vivid picture of it. And as adults, there's, we even get so serious in the sense of our reading choices. Most people I know read nonfiction books. And when I first met you, like, you hadn't read a fiction book in years.
I don't know if it was that long, but I read nonfiction for every fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
And so generally we place this emphasis on knowledge and like learning new things in a very intellectual way. But the power of imagination is that like it can take one story to help you see something in a new way at times. And I think kids just master that in a different way. If you look at how we teach kids, it's through storybooks. So many times as kids are developing, that's how they're making connections, and that's what they're looking forward to. And we lose a piece of that as adults, but I think it's really powerful. So yeah, your children only get one childhood. I think I would also add some stuff to this list in general about imagination and creativity, because I haven't seen it yet. And, it's I'll talk about it all day long.
Yes, that is important to you.
Okay, 38. All that truly matters in the end is that you loved. I'm going to jump in here first because I love how this one's written. Because so many times people will say, all that matters is that you were loved. But this one is saying all that truly matters in the end is that you loved, which again reclaims your power. And if you can experience and give love, I think that to me is way more centered on like your agency in life and how you shape and create your life in so many ways. And there's nothing better than being able to give love to yourself, and then the ripple effects of then being able to give love to other people. Right.
There's so much in this. One is the gift, the biggest gift we can give is this. It's not money. It's not knowledge to the world. It's not a contribution of something we did or thought of or said. It's the love we gave to others. So there's that. But I also resonate with you on the agency part of it. Like that's the beauty of this, because this almost sounds like, like a universal truth, right? And the way my mind works, I'm very analytical and scientific. And like, this is literally what I did within milliseconds. Like, oh, universal truth. Well, if that's true, let's test it. Does it work in all scenarios? Because if it doesn't, if it fails somewhere, then it can't be a universal truth. And what I love about this, and obviously I haven't thought tons about it, but in the few seconds I did, like that we have full control over that. So Nelson Mandela being locked up can give love to his guards, and he can accomplish this. Someone that just hasn't found someone to love them, and theoretically that person gets through life and never does have someone that truly loves them, as sad as that might be. Like, this still works. So
and it's not just romantic relationships. Right. We can share love in many different ways. Like, I'm going to go back to creativity. operating from like your core of creativity is a way of showing love and transmitting things into the world. You know, like artists pour themselves and pour love into songs that then we embrace and whatnot. So I don't think it
doesn't have to be it's any definition of that, but every single human being has the opportunity to do this, which at least theoretically in my mind makes it like, that might be a universal truth.
Yeah. I struggle with the words universal truth.
Because you don't believe there is one truth.
I don't believe there's one truth. And I believe I'm constantly seeking for wisdom. I'm constantly seeking truths, but to think that there is like the truth, I struggle with that. Or
I resonate with that. I think there's nuance to that, and there's certain things where that applies.
But I believe in like universal laws. I believe in like this thing of like, okay, yeah, this is like how it goes. We can see the patterns. It generally applies. And then I'm always open to things changing.
And not a universal, not
right.
truth. Like if this is one of several or one of many, in my mind, that kind of works. Like that another being, you know, as a human being, we have a birthright to be loved and to be worthy of love as a human being. Like I believe that to also be at this moment, I may adjust this, but I believe that to be a universal truth.
Yeah. Okay. 39. Get outside every day. Miracles are waiting everywhere.
Is this why I have to walk you?
Yes. We have this joke where if I haven't gone on a walk or gotten fresh air by 3:00, I get grumpy. So there's this joke that I have to be walked. Which is true. And I can also walk myself. Thank you very much. But yeah, getting outside, I cannot, that there is something that like kills my soul when I see huge residential buildings with windows that don't open, because being in a box all day long with no fresh air, like I can't, it just hurts my soul. I love being outside. I love fresh air. I love the sounds of nature, even if they're annoying, even if they're annoying at time, like having that cut off would slowly kill me.
Yeah. No, I love it when we can have our patio doors open.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, just even hearing the sirens go by or something, it's something outside, it's noise. I'm not as extreme as you. I can go days without being outside. There's a point I reach, but it's much later than you.
Yeah.
Like if
like
it's
3
fucking freezing cold and if it's like it's right now where it's 1 degree, I'm okay. I don't need to be outside today. But there is a point where I need to do that. And what this made me think of is how we met.
I know.
Yeah.
Are you sharing that?
Are we going through that whole story?
No, not the whole
story. We met in a park. We met outside and we were walking, and we view each other as miracles and something we each kind of manifested that seemed impossible on paper, but that we wrote down and asked that we were going to have delivered to us. And then we ran across each other outside walking in the park.
Yes. And if you haven't heard me talk about that story before, the even bigger thing is we kind of screwed it up at first because we walked past each other. We smiled, walked past, neither of us said anything. I went to the store, and then on the way back, he was still in the park. And then we had like round 2 of that.
Yes.
To be able to happen same day within like 40 minutes.
Yes. Well, the universe was going to say, no. You messed it up. We're going to give you one more try.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting outside, so much opens up for me when I'm outside. And this does not mean you have to be like all wanting to hike all the time, because
hiking sucks balls. No, it's whatever it means to you, right? No, and of course, if you love hiking, great, good for you. I don't want to do it, but I'll go throw a frisbee, or I'll play basketball, or I'll walk.
I will like go outside today. So it's like 1 degree here right now and snowing. But I went outside and grilled lunch, and that for me, like, it doesn't need to be extensive all the time. It's just like, okay, connection with nature. Here we go. And our house, we have a bunch of plants, which brings the outdoors indoor for me, which I love. Okay. Get outside every day. 40. If we all threw our problems in a pile and saw everyone else's, we'd grab ours back.
Oh,
I have never heard anyone say anything like this before.
No, I'm not initially sure.
Okay, I'm going to read it again. If we all threw our problems in a pile and saw everyone else's, we'd grab ours back. The first thing that comes up for me is around, again, everyone has their own struggles. Everyone has their own journey that are meant for them. Yeah. And one of the other episodes that we've done with Geoff, or that I've done with Geoff, is it was called an unconventional Q&A. We answered the question, should it be this hard? Mm-hmm. And I called it very intentionally a behind closed doors episode, because I think very often we don't know what's going on behind someone's closed doors. They might have it all freaking together on the outside, but internally it's a mess, or something, at home is a mess. And so for me, it's the perspective on that. I'm not sure about if we saw everyone else's, we'd grab ours back. I'm not, that hasn't sunk in.
I'm not sure about that. I do agree. Part of the message here is that, like, if we saw the problems everyone had, we might realize, like, ours aren't so bad, or that we're not the only one. Like, this assumption, like, oh, let's throw them all in, and mine are going to be worse than yours and more than yours, and so I'm gladly going to take yours because mine have got to be worse. Well, the reality is everyone's got their shit that they're dealing with, and it's as heavy as ours is, and in some cases heavier, some cases lighter, but, like, on average, we're not struggling more than the next person, although it appears that way, certainly on social media. So yeah, I think a big part of this message is, like, if we saw what everyone else is dealing with, we'd like say, like, oh, okay, I got mine, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, the biggest piece for me here is not the second half, like the we'd grab ours back. It's like this first part. And it's part of the reason why this show exists. So, if we all threw our problems in a pile and saw everyone else's, we might be way more compassionate human beings, because we would see that everyone else is going through, sometimes similar things. Mm-hmm. Or they're going through something. And I think there's so much pressure of perfectionism, or, especially on Instagram, like, Instagram versus reality. And there's so much power in knowing, one, that you're not alone, but two, knowing that your problem isn't the most unique thing about you. How you overcome it, what you do with it, what you create in your life despite the problems, those to me are the most interesting things. How you perceive it. If we threw everyone's crap in a pile, if we threw everyone's problems in a pile, we would probably see that we're more similar than different. And I think that would hold a lot of power.
Yeah. And I do think, just to note again on what you said about, or you alluded to, our problems are ours uniquely. And we have them for a reason. We are pressing for completion of things. And so the conflicts that I have, the people I choose that bring those conflicts to the forefront for me, are there for a reason. And so this concept of, like, we would choose ours back is almost like a higher level. Like, our higher self is choosing the conflicts we have. Our higher self is choosing the pain we're going through, because we need it. We need it to complete something, and to press the things that are pressing for completion for us. And if we that's why we'll repeat patterns, to kind of find the same people that bring up the same issues. So like this part at the end, where initially I'm like, I'm not sure about that piece of it. Like, maybe that's where the wisdom is in this, that we pick our battles because we need them. Yeah.
I'm also just, like, having this moment because when we met, you were already on wanting you. So, we all have these 4 dimensions. We all have material needs and physical needs. We all have an emotional world. We all have a mental world. And we all have a spiritual world. And that can mean different things for different people at different times. And so for me, spirituality opened up in a different way once I left religion, when I was, like, in early college or late high school. For you, it's been a slightly different journey. And you were kind of on, like, this like interested in spirituality vibe, like when we first met. You've been doing some stuff, but now, like, when I hear you talk, I'm like, oh, like, this has really come a long way. And also, it's funny when I hear, like, specific things I say, like, mirrored back to me, but now they're like, you've integrated them so much that it's natural for you. But I'm like, you're not saying that when we first met. It's very fun. It's very fun. And it's also what I like about having the show. Like I've said this before, but there are some episodes where I'm having a conversation and it's something that like I needed to hear, and it just comes up that way, which isn't exactly what was happening just now, but there's so much power in conversation for that reason. Okay. 41. Envy is a waste of time. You already have all you need. I think I have mixed thoughts on this. So you already have all you need. I think there's something about, we live in a world where it's like keep up with Joneses. And many times we just, as you build more, as you get more money, like you develop more needs, and they're not needs that you had when you had less money. And so we sometimes like build this where we keep having to have more and more and more. And so that I'm on board with that. Like, yeah. And a lot of times we have what we need. We don't need this constant like consumption viewpoint. Envy is interesting to me. Envy is generally like regarded as a terrible emotion and something you don't want to partake in. I do think envy can be a signifier. Envy can be a signal, just like any other emotion or, pattern, where it's like, if you choose to get curious about it, it's trying to show you something.
Mm-hmm. It can be a catalyst. I want to look up the definition of it. If we were still sitting at the bar, I'd like put me on the phone, because there's different words around this and there's different connotations. And I do believe envy has something attached to the definition that is inherently unhealthy. But wanting something, desiring something that you don't have is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. And I think there's a different, there's jealousy, there's envy, and then desire is totally separate for me. Envy to me is like being envious, like wanting what someone else has. I don't know if this is the exact definition, but this is what I'm operating off of. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there are things in there that are not great, but if you're in a state where you're experiencing that frequently, then I think it's signaling something. And if you look into it, you can get to the light on the other side. You can see what the gift is on the other side of it. I don't think it's just a complete waste of time, but I get the message here. And can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Okay. So the other thing that you brought up was desire. And I think desire is massively important. I think a lot of times we're taught to repress our desire, where it's just like, be grateful for what you have. Like, you don't need anything else. And it's like, we're not in control of our desires. They come up whether we want them to or not. And we either resist them or we allow them. We let them have a cycle where we play with the idea of having that thing. And then sometimes we follow through on it. And anytime we try to repress or resist desire, I think we get ourselves into trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. Or deny it.
We can choose to not pursue it, but I think we have to allow for it and say, yeah, I want that. I'm desiring that. And that's not unhealthy. And maybe I want to pursue it. And maybe I choose not to.
Well, and this comes up a lot of times in relationships where people will have a desire, but because their relationship has been one way, or because, so many times partners want their partner to be the same as they always were, it's not always easy for a partner to hear a new desire from someone. And so we can be vicious in that sense of having someone repress that, then rather than, allowing it to have air and then figuring out what to do with it. Just because a desire is expressed doesn't mean that it has to be acted upon.
Correct. And the ability to express our desires with our partner and to create safety for the other person to have their desires and for us to have ours, and to have the courage to say those when it could be viewed negatively for whatever reason, that's super difficult, but I also think super required for a really healthy long-term relationship. I think the repressing of that and hiding parts of ourselves is a very slippery downward slope.
I agree. Okay, 42. the best is yet to come. This is like such a phrase that is so used that it's like borderline cliche, but cliches are around for a reason. And I'm not sure, like, what is the point of this one?
I don't like it. I don't like what it implies. So you were saying like it's around for a reason. It's cliche. There's something nice about it. It's like, hey, things are going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And even to some extent, I was promoting that earlier when I'm talking about like getting older is better. Mm-hmm. Like your 40s are better than your 30s, et cetera. And there's something that feels nice and anxiety reducing and safe about that. Like, oh, like I'm just going to have faith. Things are going to get better. My life's going to get better. It may not, but that's not the point. Like, I think that's mm-hmm. just not even the point. Mm-hmm. Like the point is live in the moment, and I have what I need now. And that's, if we need something to get better, if this becomes a need, like I need it to get better in the future, that pulls us out of the present.
Or if it puts everything in the future where it's like the best is yet to come, like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy the waiting now. Around.
Right. No, it's like now the best moment is the moment we're in at the moment.
Yes. Yeah. I generally believe, like, I kind of operate with this mentality of like this or something better, mm-hmm. because I don't really believe that I'm going to go backwards just with how I live my life, with how I perceive things. Like, I don't think, even in phases where on paper to someone's perspective, it probably looks like I went backwards, whether that be in terms of success, like we don't always make the same amount every year. If there's something on paper where it looks like you've gone backwards, I never feel like I've gone backwards. I don't live like that. It's this or something better. Like, I just trust that it's just this or something better. And so, but that doesn't take me out of the present, because it doesn't mean I need something better. I'm good with now. And then if now falls apart, if change happens, if I don't have control over something and a wrench is thrown, like, I still believe this or something better.
I think that this or something better, as it relates to like, you working on a situation and maybe wanting change, or maybe being afraid of the current situation changing, like that provides some relief of like, well, it's this, or maybe this has to change because something better is around the corner. Like, I believe in that. I don't believe that we can't go backwards. And I think
no, we can go backwards. I don't believe I'm going to go backwards. I from how I live and just what I know about myself and how I value growth and learning from things, like I just don't see myself viewing it in that way. Like, I don't know.
Define it that way. I guess I disagree a little. And maybe it's just the words we're using, but I think any of us can go backwards in some objective way. Like it's never just a pure straight up and to the right. But that's
steps, not what I'm saying.
And sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And in that moment of the 1 step back, like maybe it is a little worse, but that's okay. Like, it's part of the process. So I don't, if we view going backwards as bad.
No, but that's not what I'm saying at all, because I said, even during periods where it looks like I have gone backwards, it's still at that moment, this or something better.
You can always say that.
Yes.
Yeah. But something that's not better, or this may be around the corner.
But that depends on
control.
Yeah, but it depends on if you're comparing it to the past and what you're comparing it to. I don't know. I just, like, it's easy for me to say that. And it's almost like a trust in life thing. Mm-hmm. Like,
yes. And that we share. Like, I think, again, we may not be that far off, but like, whatever happened from my perspective is like, whatever happens, it's okay. And I might go left, I might go right, I might go forward, back, but it's all part of the process, and it's okay. And I don't need to only be moving forward. I don't need to only be making more this year than I made last year.
But that's you're talking about the material things, and that's not what I'm saying. Like, I'm acknowledging for that there. Like, it's in every moment we can choose to evolve or devolve. And so I fully acknowledge, like, we can go backwards, but generally with how I live my life, I'm always choosing evolution. And that evolution might mean that I do something stupid or that I get stuck in a pattern for a while, but like it's still the evolving path.
Yes. And does it matter if we talk about the time frame? Like if we're talking longer term, like it's always forward. And part of the going backward or having something, a struggle, is part of that growth.
But is the struggle going backward? That's what I don't agree with. Like, I don't even view things as like going backward. Like, even, what I've gone through for the past year, like the past year in a lot of ways has been very healing for me in certain things I've things that have come up. I still don't view it as going backward.
I understand you're framing it as like, and you're viewing it. And I believe that on the larger scale, yes, like we're moving forward, you're moving forward. If I think about my personal life, there are times where I feel like I've gone backwards slightly. And that's okay. And in that moment, in that very short slice, looking at it, I'm not going to try to convince myself that I didn't go backwards there. If I widen the lens, that was part of my process to moving forward. And in fact, this thing that happened way later, in which I took a huge forward leap, couldn't have happened without that backward step way back when. Right. So like over the wide lens, we're moving forward.
I believe in general, the wider lens is a better approach to take. I believe too many people use too much of a tight focal lens.
Yes.
And that is also why we get into conflict in relationships, because we're using too tight of a lens. We're only seeing this much of the picture instead of taking into account this much. So in general, I just believe in the wider lens approach.
Yes.
Okay. This is a very long tangent provided by number 42. The best is yet to come. Okay. 43. We're moving on now. 43. No matter how you feel, get up, dress up, and show up. Some of that, like, God, there's so much like, it's so aggressive. Like,
I don't like this one.
It's so aggressive language.
Well, now, it's so like fucking Tony Robbins, like just power through and just. Well,
it's like Nike. It's like just do it.
Just
like
do it. Yeah, and just power through. And no matter how you feel, which to me sends a really negative message. Like ignore your feelings or suppress them and get up and show up.
There's an episode that's going to come out in the next few weeks. I don't know the exact date yet. There's an episode that's going to come out and I get into this conversation in a slightly battle way as well, because the person who I was in a conversation with, has a very willpower approach. Like sometimes we're too complacent. Like we do, like if we just wallow, we're not doing the hard things. And sometimes it does take hard work. Like things are not meant to be effortless. We can't be babies all the time. So I agree with that. But I'm with you on this. Like we do have to take into account how we're doing. Not everything is about willpower all the time. And I don't think we always know how to balance those.
Right. And I believe sometimes what is called for, what we need most is to not get up and to not dress up.
Well, I wouldn't choose get up. It's not that
I'm literally thinking about staying in bed. Like there are times, if we're going through a massive healing process, really seeing something that we need to finally face that we may have been suppressing for decades, and we need to fucking stay in bed that day and cry and work through this. Now that I would argue that is part of the process of it's not being lazy or wallowing. It's actually the more courageous thing to do, to not suppress that. But sometimes we need to just like retract and get in a corner and lick our wounds and heal. And it's part of the process of getting up and showing up for the rest of our lives.
Right. I absolutely agree. I think as with anything, the importance is in the nuance, because I think, there are also times when depression kicks in, and the more that we enable that and the more we allow it, it can be harder and harder to get back to our vibrance and get out of it. And so as with anything, I think there's nuance to that message. But with what you're saying around, part of the healing process at times can be allowing yourself a day where you don't have to do anything, allowing yourself time when you can be away from it, or you can be processing in a way that doesn't feel productive, I think is important.
Or redefining what's productive.
Absolutely.
So to the extent this is read like as like get to your job, go work hard and just put your feelings aside to get there, I hate it.
Yeah.
To the extent of it's like if this is redefined as like even like the getting up and dressing up part is like finally facing this thing that you need to face and having the courage to do that, then I applaud it. And I do recognize too that I come from a place, this is always from my perspective. I don't suffer from depression. And I do think, for me, like more of the challenge is to take that day off and feel and don't be productive on the job. That's the harder part for me. So I can like promote like, oh, we need to do that. For someone that suffers from depression and is struggling every day to get up, there's something to this of like,
there's just a different process. There's different wisdom in there. And for me, like, I like the dress up piece because on days when I feel my worst or when I am down and I don't want to get up, or I've been struggling with something with OCD, like there is something for me in dressing up. Like there's something about that's a shortcut to feeling good again. Like if I stick around in sweatpants that I don't really like and I don't feel good about myself, like it perpetuates the thoughts that I'm already going through. And so like I'm the person who on test day like would always dress up. I wanted to feel my best. I would wear heels. I would wear like a pencil skirt. Like I would dress up for test day because I wanted to feel my best. And that's great. I believe in that as a shortcut to get us out of our shit at times. But I am 100% with you. I'm also the type of person where I feel so much guilt if I'm not working on something, even if it's not like even if it's not like urgent. I don't know. I've had a huge struggle with this around like, do we actually have to work 9 to 5? Because I certainly don't, not with the style of work that I've built. It doesn't always require that. And yet so many times we feel this pressure that it's like, okay, yes, you have to do it in this way. And we all just become robots. And I don't agree with that. Right.
And I think we share the aversion, like to the extent that this is the self-help field, the culture of like hustle, show up, work all day, 7 days a week. You're not going to get to your goals if you don't do that.
Your dreams can only happen if you're with them.
It's a bunch of bullshit. And also the self-help advice of like positivity. Just think like,
just be positive.
Just be positive. Just know you can do it. Like, just show up and just know, and just like, it's a bunch of bullshit. So I felt that when I first heard this, so there's some wisdom in this, and there's some things that make me want to cringe.
Yes, I'm with you. If you have thoughts on this, please comment. Okay. So 44 is yield.
Ooh, I like that one.
What would you think if it said pause instead of yield?
I think that's different in my impression, because yield means something to me because it's something personally that like I've had to embrace, and I've gotten a lot of
okay, so what does yield mean to you then?
So for me, it is kind of this message of give up the illusion of control. Understand things are the way they are, and instead of like my natural inclination my whole life has been to do and control and feel super agency and like take on responsibility, and I can change this and I can make it better, and I can affect this. And if it's something that I really care about, especially with someone else, I've spent a lot of time in that mode of like anxiety and stress and trying to change something and feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders, but putting that on myself and feeling like you can do this and you can suffer your way to affecting something and changing the outcome. And then there's this other world of yield, of just like, let it go and recognize we don't have nearly the control we think we do. Accept life for what it is, and it's not bad, and it's going to work out, and it's going to be okay. And there's such relief for me in that, and it's something I've had to embody over the last 5-7 years, and I have found a lot of wisdom in that. So that's what it means to me.
Yeah, I think there's control. And then we live in this world, you know, where people want influence, people want power, you know, a lot of times like that, those are the things you're rewarded for. But there's a difference between like having authority. Like you're a very authoritative person in general with how you live your life. There's a difference between control and trying to control everything and still maintaining like authority over how you do things or like over yourself. And I think the yield is powerful there. Someone who's solely operating out of like needing control may not recognize that you can maintain authority while also yielding.
Mm-hmm.
So I like yield. The power of the pause is something I talk about all the time. And I think a yield is a temporary pause. And so that's what resonates with me. In general, when we just react instead of responding, we're not taking the time for the pause. And in that moment of a pause, whether it's 1 second or 5 minutes or a few days, so much room opens up and it can be expanded. Your pauses like to be longer than what I want at times, especially like if we're in some sort of conflict. But like anytime you can pause, even if it's a second, and just ask yourself a question about what's going on for the other person or what's going on internally for you, it opens up the world so much, and there's so much possibility in there. So the power of the pause can relate to yielding for me. And in that sense, I like it.
Can I play this back for you? We're in the middle of a conflict.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
I embody the power of pause. Our pauses are just different time periods at times. But I accept this about you.
Okay.
Do you accept this about me?
I do.
Okay. 45. We have made it to the end. Life isn't tied with a bow, but it's still a gift.
It's not, life isn't perfect, but it's still an amazing gift. And super wise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Like everything isn't perfect, and it doesn't look perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not even look like a gift.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, one of my favorite sayings is, what if it's a gift?
It is one of your favorite sayings. Yeah.
Yes. In which case it's like something that seems bad or unfortunate, like having to connect through LAX and then having the flight oversold and having to get off the plane when we're just supposed to get right back on it. Like, what if those are a gift? Mm-hmm. And $2,400 later and a nice dinner in LA, it was a gift.
Yeah. And, you know, some of my favorite gifts haven't been wrapped in a bow. Some of my favorite gifts, you know, come in the form of an experience or a moment that I've shared with someone, or it's haphazard. Like it's just this, it comes around and it proves itself as a gift, but it was a very haphazard way of getting there. Mm-hmm. And I think generally we need less bows. We need to like have less things. The goal of less things be, let's just have this with a bow on it. Because generally I think that's when we get stuck in perfection and all these other things. We take ourselves too seriously. Like it doesn't need a bow.
Yeah. And look for the gift in the things that aren't wrapped. Mm-hmm. You know, like that's the point of this. I think
I like that.
There's a lot of gifts that we have presented to us, but if it doesn't have the bow on it, we don't see it. We don't realize it. We don't view it as a positive and a gift. And so there's something about appreciation in here.
Yep. And even in relationships, like sometimes, you know, so many people are like, oh, the grass is greener on the other side. And like, there is something about the grass is green is where you water it. But the concept of like looking for the perfect relationship, like this perfect man's going to come along and he's going to have a bow and he's never going to trigger me and it's all going to be great. And he's going to be exactly who I need him to be at all moments of the day. And it's like, what? Where is there any sense of responsibility about your influence in the relationship there and in that image? But I think so many people fall into that trap because it's half of the messages we see in romantic comedies and any other story about love. When really, I love what you said around like the gift, look for the gifts and things that aren't wrapped. And what if it didn't have to have a bow? Because if you allow someone else to not have a bow, you're affording yourself to not have a bow. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is learn to let ourselves not have to be perfectly wrapped and packaged either, because that's how we get into feeling like we have to fit in this box that can be wrapped up and have a bow around it and presented to someone else. And that is a world that is full of pain and not fun to live in. So pop out of the box.
Or the cake.
Don't need to be wrapped. Okay, we've made it to the end in this 2-part episode of the 45 lessons Regina Brett wrote down when she turned 90. I would love to know which one of these was your favorite, which one jumped out to you. Comment on any of the tangents Geoff and I went on.
Which one did she miss? What's 46?
Yeah, what else needs to be on here? Geoff and I talked about throughout this some of the ways that we would edit or modify it or something we would add in. But yeah, I would love to know, what do you think is missing from the list? So thank you so much for tuning in. This has been another episode of Make It Mentionable, and I will catch you next week. You've just finished listening to another episode of Make It Mentionable with me, your host, Alyssa Patmos. If you're looking for more in between episodes, then sign up for The Peel. It's my free newsletter that gives tips for how to navigate whatever life dishes. And it's also the place where I share the juiciest of stories. To check it out, head on over to alyssapatmos.com/The Peel. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.